Episode 2 of 20. What is PBL? You are now on the PBL journey. So we're answering this question over this binge episodes, right? In 20 episodes, we're going to give you the full flavor and all the different angles of what project-based learning is and how you can lead a vision and a mission at your school. So what is PBL? It's a mindset. It's an engaging real-world instructional model that is scalable. It brings your different initiatives together: SEL, personalization, engagement, empowerment, all the things that are on the right side of your evaluation rubric that your teachers are trying to get to and they're frustrated because they can't. It all comes together with project-based learning. Give you a couple examples. Title I elementary, teaching perimeter and persuasive writing through a raised garden bed. We talked about that example, and that teacher didn't redo everything that she'd ever done. She was a veteran teacher of 10 years, but she repackaged it into project-based learning, brought in community partners, and then performed the best practices perimeter workshops that she'd always done. So we're not completely restarting. Biology is done by collecting fungus samples and submitting them to Purdue, engaging standards, and finding a new fungus that had never been found in North America before. It's groundbreaking work when you take just sophomores out into their community to grab some samples for the day, but they're using real samples. We're connecting standards to real world problems to empower students with employability skills and opportunity while defining school culture and reputation. You're going to find it's more than a curriculum. In fact, at Magnified Learning, we have no curriculum to give you. In fact, we create curriculum creators out of your teachers, right? So they're going to look at their local networks, local community, their local students. They're going to end up with a very customized, personalized solution for your school. Every administrator should bring project-based learning to their school. You don't have to be a PBL expert in the actual classroom practice. You've got this. This series is going to give you exactly what you need to know to lead a PBL school vision. You don't have to have done PBL in the classroom. Your teachers have a whole nother track of learning. There's actually a whole nother podcast, Binge PBL for Teachers, that they can run through to get the overview. But for you, there's some key mindsets that you need. And then in the second half of this Binge podcast, we're going to get into a few more of the specifics of how you bring this right into your school. We define project-based learning as an inquiry-based approach centered around solving real-world problems. We're going to call them authentic problems or real-world problems, not scenarios. It's a huge difference. We've actually got a whole episode that we'll talk about that. I want to highlight how PBL fosters critical thinking, collaboration, and student agency, getting your learners to move from passive to active. It's a big deal, and we've got a process for that. A lot of it comes through the culture that, again, is going to empower your teachers, that will then empower your staff. So there are some teaching shifts that do need to happen in the classroom, and they're going to need your support for that. In the same way you're asking your learners to move from passive to active, that's a whole different arrangement for the classroom, right? I'm expecting to come in, sit down, hang out for 8 hours, and then go home. Well, we're going to change that. You do the same thing for your teachers. They're going to be looking at things differently. They're not going to look at their textbook and go from page 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. It's a different process. They're going to be more engaged. There's going to be more transparency. You're going to need to walk them through that and provide them professional development opportunities that allow them to increase those skills. You definitely want leadership support in a grassroots movement. And I would say that Magnified Learning, we grew up in a grassroots movement. Right? I was teaching 8th grade English at an urban school out of Indianapolis, and we started doing project-based learning, and things started to grow across the whole state. We brought things together, and it was teachers teaching teachers, and principals were allowing things to happen. And we saw several systems that would just dry up because administration didn't understand what supports they needed. Right? Faculty meetings will need to change. Professional development needs to change. Schedules might need to change. Right? And there's reasoning for that, and there's best practice to those things. But if you're not aware of those things, then your movement that you want to create with project-based learning, it won't really stick. So we've got a whole process for that. Again, we're going to walk you through that, but I think it's important for you to know that this instructional model is different and it's going to need your support. The other big idea I want you to pick up on what is PBL right now is that PBL is different than traditional teaching. Traditional teaching, you have the teacher up front. They run every single minute of that 48 minutes. They are up front. They are doing the things. And they might lecture for 48 minutes. That's super easy to say, yep, that's probably not great for kids. But they also might do some things where they're interactive and they're fun and kids enjoy the class, right? Like when I was teaching 8th grade English traditionally in the first part of my career, kids loved my class. They loved Mr. Stoyer, but it was very traditional. It was me imposing things on learners and getting them to have fun in order to do things. And they would generally do them, but they were still in a passive role. We're trying to switch things where it's more active and they're solving those problems. So the shift from teacher directed to student driven learning is really important. Passive versus active learning, it does different things in your brain. And if you want your learners to be empowered, we've got to give them some voice, some choice, so that they're stepping up to do these things. And then there's some culture momentum that takes over. So it's also going to be different in PBL versus traditional teaching because you're going to compare traditional assessments with authentic demonstrations of learning in PBL. So can you still have, that common assessment across grade levels? Of course you can. Those things can still be there. They should be there to figure out best practice. And then you might find out that those teachers that are using project-based learning are getting better results, and maybe it should spread. You need to be prepared for that. You also might find out that some of your PBL teachers aren't quite ready for some things. And they're, because again, that transparency, their assessment practice might not be awesome. And that'll come out. And we need to say, hey guys, we need to coach on this. So those are some of the things I want you to know, that when you're doing PBL, if the room's just louder and it's chaotic, that's not what we're looking for, right? We're looking for collaboration and critical thinking. Of course, we're looking for performance assessments. We're looking for those things, but there's a process, right? And kids should be learning continually and mastering those standards. We're also going to bring in a lot of reflection and feedback in the PBL process. When you look at the Binge PBL podcast for teachers, we've got 2 whole episodes on feedback and reflection, because we want our learners to develop feedback amongst themselves so that, again, the teacher is not the one that has to give every little bit of feedback. And we want our learners to be self-reflective so they can look at their choices and their work and say, I could do better than that. I'm going to try again. And it might sound far-fetched that could actually happen in your school, but it does. As we start to bring that culture, your learners are reflecting, they're giving each other feedback before it ever gets to an adult. And that's when things really start moving. So there's definitely some differences between PBL and a traditional teaching environment because our goals are different. In a traditional environment, we're trying to get kids to learn content so that they can show mastery. And in a PBL environment, we want our learners to learn content and show mastery and build engagement and empowerment and build employability skills. And we think those all come together. So what is PBL? It's a mindset. There's a structure to it. There's 6 steps to PBL. You can get my book, PBL Simplified. Remember, episode 5, you're going to get a free copy of that. Your teachers will as well in the Binge PBL for teachers. And there's 6 steps. So it's a very process-oriented instructional model, but it's not a curriculum-based instructional model. There's a difference there. And it's a little bit different than STEM, although PBL works well in a STEM environment. And it's a little bit different than service learning, even though PBL works well in a service learning environment, because STEM and service learning don't have national models. Design thinking has a model, but it's pretty difficult to bring into the classroom setting with the different assessments that we have. So project-based learning becomes that perfect mix to bring about the rigor that we want from our content standard learning and mastery, and the real world authentic problem solving that we want from our learners, so they can be introduced to really cool people and see those careers as possibilities and develop those employability skills we know that they need when they leave our K-12 environment. Go to whatispbl.com if you have not already. Go to whatispbl.com, and there's admin specific resources, right? Just like this podcast is just for you, we want the resources to be separated for you and your teachers. So go there. And if you've got some innovative teachers, you can send them to whatispbl.com. And there's a teacher sign up so they can get teacher resources to get started. Let's roll to the next episode, Netflix style, to define the essential elements of authentic PBL.